Hello, I'm Kathy Jameson, the Proposition Lady, and I'm here to help you understand the state propositions on your California election ballot. Because we have 3 bond measures on this year's ballot, I thought we should start with a basic refresher on how bonds work and take a quick look at the overall debt picture in California. Bonds work just like a loan. Investors buy bonds to provide us with cash, then we pay them back over time with interest. California bonds are purchased by individuals and institutional investors. These investors are attracted to California bonds due to their generally stable credit ratings and the state's large and diverse economy. We use these loans to finance large projects we can't afford to pay for out of pocket, like roads, schools, housing, water quality, and climate improvements. Just like an individual might take out a loan to buy a house, or a business might borrow money to finance a larger manufacturing plant. Sometimes it makes sense to borrow money now to invest in the future. These investments provide services to the community over many years, which is why it's reasonable that not just current, but future taxpayers help to pay for them. There are 3 types of bonds: lease revenue bonds, traditional revenue bonds, and general obligation bonds. The first 2 are paid back via dedicated funding streams and therefore do not require voter approval if passed by the legislature. General obligation bonds are repaid from the state's taxpayer-funded general budget, which is why they must be approved by voters. We have 3 bond measures on this year's ballot. Prop 37, which establishes a second mortgage homebuyer program, is a $25 billion revenue bond. This means that the debt is funded by proceeds from the new program and not by California's general budget fund. If the legislature had passed this measure, it would not need to be approved by voters because it pays for itself. But because 37 was a citizen-led initiative, the voters will have to approve it. Prop 1, which seeks approval for around $11 billion in bonds to fund housing, and Prop 38, which seeks $8.4 billion to fund immunology research, are general obligation bonds. If passed, the debt service payments will come out of California's general budget fund. At the state level, general obligation bonds require a 2/3 supermajority vote in the legislature. Citizen-led initiatives like Prop 37 skip the 2/3 majority legislative vote and qualify through signatures instead. Once a bond initiative is on the ballot, however it got there, it only requires a simple majority vote to pass. Then the state government is authorized to issue the bonds. While bonds are typically sold successfully, there are instances when some bonds go unsold, particularly if market conditions are unfavorable or if there is insufficient demand at the proposed interest rates. This means that when we pass a bond measure, California doesn't assume the entire amount of debt right away. It could be years before all the bonds from a measure are sold. So what is the current state of California's debt? According to the Treasurer's Office October 2025 Debt Affordability Report, we are currently carrying a roughly $72 billion debt load of bonds that have been issued. Another $43 billion has been authorized but not yet sold. Those numbers only cover general obligation bonds, not revenue bonds, which in theory pay for themselves. The authorized but not sold pool has grown sharply in recent years. In November 2024, voters approved 2 $10 billion general obligation bond measures, one to fund schools, the other for climate initiatives. Those bonds just about doubled the backlog of approved but unsold bond debt. That said, California's current debt service ratio, which is the percent of the budget spent to pay back the debt, is in the lower end of the historical range. We're currently spending around 3% of the budget to pay down our debt. The passage of Props 1 and 38 this November would add a modest but real amount to our debt service load. Debt service payments for general obligation bonds are paid from California's general budget fund. The more we spend on our debt, the less money we have for everything else. So what is California's overall budget outlook? Here, fiscal experts disagree. Governor Newsom's May budget proposal says the state has eliminated its projected deficit through 2028, pointing to stronger than expected tax revenue. But the nonpartisan Legislative Analyst's Office takes a more cautious view. While acknowledging the improved revenue picture, it argues the state is still leaning heavily on reserves and borrowing to call the budget balanced. Both sides agree the state's revenue is unusually dependent on a booming stock market and AI-related income taxes. They simply disagree on how much that risk should worry us right now. When you see a bond measure on your election ballot, it's worth keeping this bigger picture in mind. Bonds fund things California genuinely needs, but every dollar of debt service is a dollar that isn't available for other priorities if the budget does tighten. As with everything on your ballot, it's worth weighing the pros and cons of each measure for yourself before casting your vote. I'm Kathy Jameson, the Proposition Lady, and I appreciate you being here with me today. See you soon, California voters. Bye now.